Hey guys, what is going on? It's Don here from Nova Spirit Tech, and today I got a really cool episode for you guys. We are going to be making a Raspberry Pi VPN router. So let's get started. All right, so for those of you who don't know what a VPN is, I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. So basically, it's encrypted traffic between your computer and somebody else's computer. So your IPS or internet service providers can't see what's going on in your traffic. In most cases, if you don't have a VPN, the IPS could kind of read what you're doing on one end to another end. They could figure out your IP and the destination IP. And if it's not an encrypted traffic like HTTPS and stuff like that, they could actually read what's going on in between. So having a VPN kind of protects against that. So like I said earlier, what we're going to be doing is making a VPN router with the Raspberry Pi. Now, I use PIA, or Private Internet Access, and I'm a big believer of them. I've been using them for years, and I've used multiple accounts before, but PIA, I always go back to PIA. Now, the only downside to PIA, or most other accounts, it only allows a limited account connections. For PIA, you basically only have 5 devices that you can connect to it. So if you got a household like mine, a computer, laptop, a tablet, cell phone, your TV, Kodi boxes or Fire Sticks and stuff like that, you know what I mean. Then you have a lot of other devices in the house, your wife's, your son's tablet, all these devices, but it already surpasses 5 accounts. So what can you do to solve that problem? So basically, I should really just draw this out. Okay, so basically, you have more than 5 devices, okay? So I'm just gonna say 6 devices over here on the bottom, okay? Normally, you would have to connect to each one at a time, okay? So basically, you're using about 5 accounts already. Now, if we go back, okay, and we set up a VPN router using our Raspberry Pi, all you have to do is have the 5 or 6 devices connect to that one and then shoot over to the VPN. That means you're only using 1 account, which saves you 4 other accounts for your cell phone and stuff, so if you're on the road. So this installation is actually pretty simple. It's a lot of copy and pasting from my website itself because I already wrote out a script, wrote out all this stuff. Very minimal configurations. You basically have to configure what your username and password is and your somewhat of a network setup on your house, because I don't use a standard IP address. If you guys have a different IP scheme, you might want to change certain parameters for this setup. But other than that, it's pretty much straightforward. For this tutorial, we're going to be using a Pi. You can actually use a Tinkerboard, or you could use anything Linux related, a virtual machine. Everything works, but we're going to be targeting a Raspberry Pi because it's low powered and you could place it basically anywhere near your router and it'll work. In this tutorial, I'm also going to be using PIA. I don't know. This could probably apply to other VPN services if you already have it that supports OpenVPN. But I'm going to be using PIA. So if you guys are interested in signing up for PIA, I do have an affiliate link linked below in the description that will help the channel out a little bit if you're going to use that link. And let's get into it. All right, guys. So we are on our desktop right now, and I am connected to a Raspberry Pi. This is a freshly formatted Raspbian Jessie, which I just downloaded from the Raspbian Jessie site. And you could use either version, either the light or the full. But the only thing I set up on this was the host name, and it jumps right into console. And I also lowered the GPU memory to 16 instead of 64, whatever was default. So the first thing we're going to do always is to update. So sudo apt-get update. And make sure you have internet connection and everything. Before we get into everything, you want to update your repositories, you want to update your system. Just make sure everything is updated. Sudo apt-get upgrade. And we're just going to go through this and hit yes, so everything is upgraded. So while this is going on, I actually just wanted to mention that if you guys missed last week's episode, I'm so super excited to show you what I have installed. I've been playing around with those little devices that I got from Micro Center. A lot of fun, lots of fun. I can't wait to show you guys. I apologize for the blurriness of that video. I got no excuse for it. It's just I apologize for it. Now, if you guys want to see some of the stuff that I've been playing around with, I will be uploading them on Instagram. I kind of use it like a Snapchat type thing. I use the stories a lot. So after 24 hours, it goes away. But if you guys follow me, you'll be able to see what I'm playing around with basically. And I play around with a lot of stuff throughout the day. All right, another thing I want to mention about this project is that this is a VPN router alongside with your main router. So you basically have your, I'm going to call it clean net. So your clean internet where everything goes through there and it could kind of be viewed and all that stuff. Then you have your VPN router where all your stuff gets encrypted. The reason why I kept it like this is if you do streaming or you're a YouTuber or stuff like that, they want to know the location where you're uploading from. So you want to use your regular internet for a lot of that stuff. But if you are, you know, either using some streaming sites or you're using some, you know, questionable websites that you don't want anybody to go look at, or if you just want the privacy, then you could adjust your gateway to the Raspberry Pi and then have everything filtered through the VPN. So I find this is the best way, so you have best of both worlds. And again, keep in mind that when you are doing this with the Raspberry Pi, it is a little bit underpowered. I could hook up to like 5 devices on this and I still get decent speed, but your mileage may vary if you need more horsepower because you are doing an encryption on the Raspberry Pi. So it is going to be using a lot of the CPU. There's, you know, you might only be able to get like 5 computers, or you might only be able to get 4 if they're constantly being used. It all depends. The way we're going to be doing this is using OpenVPN. And I've read that PPTP, I have advised against using PPTP as far as this service, but it uses less CPU power as far as trying to process everything. So you might be able to connect more clients, you might be able to connect more computers onto your Raspberry Pi by using PPTP. Another thing is, keep in mind that you're on a 10 by 100 megabit connection. So if your internet is slower than 10 by 100, you're pretty much good. But if it's faster than that, you might want to go for a different route where you're using a gigabit LAN like the Tinkerboard or something like that. Or you might want to upgrade using a USB gigabit LAN port, and that might help a little bit, but you're still not going to get the full 10 and 100 by 1000 gigabit, you know, megabits. So there's many directions, depends on how you're going to use it. Definitely on this device, on the Raspberry Pi 3, you're able to connect at least simultaneously 2 to 3 devices using the connection at the same time. Anything more, I connect up to 5, but they're not simultaneously being used, and it works perfectly fine. And I'm going to show you an example later. But yes, keep that in mind. If you're struggling with, hey, why is it so slow? I thought I'd get more speed than that. It might be your CPU on the Raspberry Pi. So keep that in mind. All right, we are finally done with the upgrade. So let's get moving to doing the rest of the stuff. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is set up a static IP. So that way your IP does not change and you know where to target your gateways. All right, so to do that, we're going to go to sudo nano etc network interfaces. And in here, this is where you're going to set up your static IP. If you're planning to do this using WLAN, you can. There's actually a lot of tutorials on how to set up your WLANs. So you could automatically sign into your WPA or whatever security you have and then set up an IP. But in our case, we're going to use Etho because this is going to be set up right next to my router and you want to get the maximum amount of speed you can instead of having to use Wi-Fi and deal with, you know, all that stuff. So to get started, we are going to add auto etho 0. If you have another device connected to it, like a USB Ethernet or stuff like that, it might be etho 1. So you might want to change it to according to what you have set up. But auto etho allow hot plug etho 0. And then underneath the iNet manual, this is where you start setting up your own stuff. Underneath that, you want to change manual to static. And then you want to tab in address. And here you want to set up your address. So for you, it might be 192.168.1.2. That might be something you want to set up. In my case, I have a different IP range, so I'm going to do 105.2. The next thing is net mask, which would be 255.255.255.0. Gateway, we are still using the original gateway for this, so it's going to be 192.168.1.1. 1.1 for your case, or in my case, it'll be 105.1. And last would be the DNS name servers. So you don't want to use the whatever your internet service provider's DNS is. So you want to point it to something else. In my case, I'm going to be pointing it to Google name servers 8.8.8.8 and 8.8.4.4. And save it, Control X, and then hit Y to save, and that's it. You got that all set up. If you want to reboot right now, you can, and then just log into the 102 IP. While I still have internet, might as well just grab everything I need. I'm going to do sudo apt-get install OpenVPN, because that's the connection we're going to be using. So we're going to let that install. All right, now that's in, we're going to need to download the OpenVPN certificates and everything from PIA. So we're going to do wget https www.privateinternet.access.com/openvpn/openvpn.zip. All right, so now we're going to want to extract the file that we just downloaded. So it's going to be unzip openvpn.zip-d, and we're going to name the directory openvpn. Now it's going to extract everything into OpenVPN directory. So we can cd into it and take a look. Everything is here, and there's some files that we need to transfer over to another folder. So now that we downloaded, extracted everything, we need to move this file, which is the PEM and the CRT, which is the certificate and the encoding, and I don't remember what it's called, but yeah. We're going to do sudo cp crl rsa, stuff like that, to etc/openvpn. And then we're also going to move sudo cp, we're going to copy over that ca.crt over to etc openvpn. The next thing we need to copy over is the location that we're going to be using our VPN in. So I'm from New York, US and stuff like that. So that's the file I'm going to be copying over. For you, if you're in UK or anywhere else, you might want to copy the location that's closest to you. So I'm going to do sudo cp us/New York, that's how you do the spacing. And then here's the change. We're going to do /etc/openvpn/ and then you name it whatever you want, but it has to be a config file. So I'm just going to name it, for the sake of being easy, us-conf. All right, now that we copied all the files that we need over to OpenVPN folder, we're going to go in there and create a login. So we're going to do sudo nano /etc/openvpn/login. And it's going to be a blank file. And over here, you just need to type in your username and your password in that line space. So it's one on top of each other. Then save it. Control X and then Y to save as the name. Now that we've transferred everything over when we created the login, we just have to change one more file to make sure it points to the correct CRT certificates and all that stuff for us. So we're going to do sudo nano etc openvpn. And remember that file we created called us.config? That's what we need to change now. Now, if you head down to the bottom, you're going to notice CRL verify. We're going to just add /etc/openvpn to that, so it knows it's going to that folder. And we're going to add the CA, which is etc/openvpn/ca.rsa. Now, the user auth password, we want to add etc openvpn login. Now it knows where all the files are. Control X to save, Y. And now that everything is all saved, let's test it out. So to test this out, we do sudo openvpn config --config /etc openvpn/us.conf. As a matter of fact, the reason why it didn't work is because I didn't reboot after installing OpenVPN. So I'm going to reboot this right now. Okay, now after the reboot, let's try that command again. So it's going to be sudo openvpn config --config /etc openvpn/us.conf. And now it should work. And as you can see, it hasn't kicked me out with any errors or anything. So it is actually working right now, running this VPN. And so now that we know the connection is established, the password that I put in and username that I put in is good. We are now going to pull out of this by using Control-C. And we're going to set everything else up. First thing we need to do is enable this while it boots. So we're going to do sudo systemctl enable OpenVPN at US, or whatever you named it. So I just named it at US. Now it's going to create a service. Every time it boots up the Raspberry Pi, it's going to establish a connection through the tunnel. The next thing we have to do is enable forwarding, because we're going to allow traffic, our LAN traffic, into our Raspberry Pi and then, use the VPN. So we need to allow forwarding. So we're going to do sudo nano etc/sysctl.config. In here, just kind of roll down to the bottom. It's more towards the bottom, but what you could do is search for it using Control-W. Now, it's right here, IPv4 IP forwarding equals 1. That's what you want. We save it, Control-X, save. And now let's restart that service, which will be sudo sysctl-p. All right, so now it enabled forwarding. The rest now is all up to setting up all the IP tables and all that stuff. What I'm going to do is drop into sudo, and it's much easier for me to type everything. Now I have everything on my website. If you are looking for everything, it's just a matter of copy and paste from my website. I'm going to have all the links in the description below. So let's go sudo su. Okay, now we're in super user mode, and I'm going to kind of go through what I'm trying to do, and I hope you guys might be able to explain. Now, the first thing I'm going to allow is loopback. So, 127.0.0.1 or stuff like that. If you got some services that requires loopback, now enabled it, okay? The next thing is to allow traffic from your LAN, in from your LAN, and allow traffic from your device out to the VPN. So that's this IP table right here. Now the next one is, this one will allow OpenVPN sockets. Another important thing is you have to allow NTP, because you have to make sure that your clock is synced with the VPN's clock. That's how it works. And yeah, just allow this. This will allow the NTP, which is port 123. The next thing is DHCP OK, to allow if it's the DHCP services and stuff like that. That's going to be allowed. Now, you don't have to do this. Like I said, I'm going to have this whole thing, you just copy and paste. It'll be 2 seconds. But I'm just trying to go through it real quick. Now, the next thing is to bring the output through the tunnel. Okay. Here is, I would like to call a kill switch. And what I mean by a kill switch is it will allow forwarding only if VPN is alive. So basically, if your VPN's down, it won't allow the traffic to go out to the internet, which is a good thing, because if you're doing some torrenting or some stuff, this, as soon as it doesn't detect the tunnel, it will just basically drop the connection, so you won't get in trouble or anything. And then all said and done, basically make post routing and then allow all the traffic. This enables the whole thing to work. Now, there's a lot more on the website that I'm going to put, which is like SYN packets and do not allow bad SYN packets and stuff like that. I will have all that in the website. I'm just not going to include this right now. It's going to make this video super, super long. Now that everything's all set, we want to be able to save it so it's persistent. That way, when we reboot the system, it's still going to remember all the IP tables. So to do that, we're going to do sudo apt-get install IP tables persistent. This will install a little script or a software that will basically say, every time you boot up, this is how I want my IP tables to be. And the first time you install it, that's how I might install it earlier. It will ask you if you want to save the rules. And I would say yes to save the rules, and save the rules for IPv6 also. Okay, now we want to enable that service on boot up. Systemctl enable net filter persistent. I did spell it wrong. All right, now that it's going to enable every time you boot up, so it's going to restore all the IP tables that we put in. Now, if you missed it and you actually installed it earlier, you could always do sudo persistent. You can always do the sudo net filter persistent save, and that will save all the rules. We are basically done with this. All we have to do is just reboot and make sure everything comes back online. So I'm going to do sudo reboot, and in the meantime I am going to head over to my other operating system right over here, which is a Windows 10 fresh install. It's on my virtual machine, and we are going to be able to test everything out. Now heading over to Mozilla Firefox, I'm going to do an IP chicken, which will give you your IP address. And here we have it, my IP address. And if I connect it to my Raspberry Pi now, it should be a different IP address. So let's give that a try. I'm going to minimize this. And we're going to go over to network, open networks services. For every Windows it's different. For if you got a Mac or a Linux, you know, it's different to set this up. But what you first want to do is figure out what the IP address, because we're going to be using the same IP address for this machine, just a different gateway. So I'm going to go into details, and you're going to see this IP address is 102. All right, so I'm going to go into properties now, head over to IPv4, hit properties, use filter address 192.168.105.102, because that was the IP address before. 255.255.255.0, that's normal. Now here's where we change it, 192.168.105.2, you know, in my instance. I actually have it at 73, but you get the idea. 8.8.8.8, 8.8.4.4, and those are for the DNS servers. Hit OK, close that out. It's gonna take over with the new settings. And now if I head over to my Mozilla Firefox and do an IP chicken, we now have a new IP address. Everything is switched over to the VPN. And all I did was just reboot the Pi, and I haven't had to go back in. And as I was saying earlier, some of the things we want to check out is speedtest.net. And again, depending on your internet service provider, I use PIA, and they are great. The speed is amazing. I don't have any issues with them. And all, my Raspberry Pi is able to handle traffic and stuff like that. And as you can see, it's doing really good in speed. It's like 5 megabytes per second, or 50 megabits per second if you want to put it that way. For download and upload, I get about 24. So all in all, running it through the Pi, I'm getting good speed. And now I can connect multiple devices onto this Raspberry Pi. That means I'm only using one account for this. So thanks for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please hit that like button, smash it a couple of times. So if you guys got any questions about this, or want me to work on another video idea similar to this or something like that, hit it up in the comments below. To be honest, the easiest way to reach me these days is through Twitter. I find it a little bit hard to navigate through YouTube. I just get hit with a lot of notifications sometimes. Sometimes I don't even get notified. The easiest way to communicate is hitting me up on Twitter. I'm gonna have all the links in the description below. You're gonna see I always put the first comment as either my Twitter or my Instagram. And again, if you wanna behind the scenes of stuff that I can't fit into these videos, it's on Instagram. I actually use it for the stories, much like Snapchat, but I'm not good with Snapchat, so I stayed with Instagram. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing, and if you hit that little bell notification, it'll let you know when the next video is gonna be out. And as I say in my nerd cave, hack till it hurts.